Judges chapter 7. So Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and his army got up early and went as far as the spring of Harod. The armies of Midian were camped north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many warriors with you. If I let all of you fight the Midianites, the Israelites will boast to me that they saved themselves by their own strength. Therefore, tell the people, whoever is timid or afraid may leave this mountain and go home." So 22,000 of them went home, leaving only 10,000 who were willing to fight. But the Lord told Gideon, "There are still too many. Bring them down to the spring, and I will test them to determine who will go with you and who will not." When Gideon took his warriors down to the water, the Lord told him, "Divide the men into two groups. In one group, put all those who cup water in their hands and lap it up with their tongues like dogs. In the other group, put all those who kneel down and drink with their mouths in the stream." Only 300 of the men drank from their hands. All the others got down on their knees and drank with their mouths in the stream. The Lord told Gideon, "With these 300 men, I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites. Send all the others home." So Gideon collected the provisions and ram's horns of the other warriors and sent them home. But he kept the 300 with him. The Midianite camp was in the valley, just below Gideon. That night, the Lord said, "Get up, go down into the Midianite camp, for I have given you victory over them. But if you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah. Listen to what the Midianites are saying, and you will be greatly encouraged. Then you will be eager to attack." So Gideon took Purah and went down to the edge of the enemy camp. The armies of the Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east had settled in the valley like a swarm of locusts. Their camels were like grains of sand on the seashore, too many to count. Gideon crept up just as a man was telling his companion about a dream. The man said, "I had this dream, and in my dream, a loaf of barley bread came tumbling down into the Midianite camp. It hit a tent, turned it over, and knocked it flat." His companion answered, "Your dream can only mean one thing. God has given Gideon, son of Joash the Israelite, victory over the Midian and all its allies." When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed in worship before the Lord. Then he returned to the Israelite camp and shouted, "Get up, for the Lord has given you victory over the Midianite hordes." He divided the 300 men into three groups and gave each man a ram's horn and a clay jar with a torch in it. Then he said to them, "Keep your eyes on me. When I come to the edge of the camp, do just as I do. As soon as I and those with me blow the ram's horns, blow your horns too, all around the entire camp, and shout, 'For the Lord and for Gideon!'" It was just after midnight, after the changing of the guard, when Gideon and the 100 men with him reached to the edge of the Midianite camp. Suddenly they blew the ram's horns and broke their clay jars. Then all three groups blew their horns and broke their jars. They held the blazing torches in their left hand and the horns in their right hands, and they all shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon!" Each man stood at his position around the camp and watched as all the Midianites rushed around in panic, shouting as they ran to escape. When the 300 Israelites blew their ram's horns, the Lord caused the warriors in the camp to fight against each other with their swords. Those who were not killed fled to places as far as Bethshitta near Zererah and to the border of Abel Meholah near Tabbath. Then Gideon sent for the warriors of Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh, who joined in chasing the armies of Midian. Gideon also sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down to attack the Midianites. Cut them off at the shallow crossing of the Jordan River at Bethbara." So all the men of Ephraim did as they were told. They captured Oreb and Zeb, the two Midianite commanders, killing Oreb at the rock of Oreb and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. And they continued to chase the Midianites. Afterward, the Israelites brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon, who was by the Jordan River. Chapter 8. Then the people of Ephraim asked Gideon, "Why have you treated us this way? Why didn't you send for us when you first went out to fight the Midianites?" And they argued heatedly with Gideon. But Gideon replied, "What have I accomplished compared to you? Aren't even the leftover grapes of Ephraim's harvest better than the entire crop of my little clan of Abiezer? God gave you victory over Oreb and Zeb, the commanders of the Midianite army. What have I accomplished compared to that?" When the men of Ephraim heard Gideon's answer, their anger subsided. Gideon then crossed the Jordan River with his 300 men, and though exhausted, they continued to chase the army. When they reached Succoth, Gideon asked the leaders of the town, "Please give my warriors some food. They are very tired. I am chasing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." But the officials of Succoth replied, "Catch Zebah and Zalmunna first, and then we will feed your army." So Gideon said, "After the Lord gives me victory over Zebah and Zalmunna, I will return and tear your flesh with the thorns and briars from the wilderness." From there, Gideon went up to Peniel and again asked for food, but he got the same answer. So he said to the people of Peniel, "After I return in victory, I will tear down this tower." By this time, Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor with about 15,000 warriors, all that remained of the allied armies of the east, for 120,000 had already been killed. Gideon circled around by the caravan route east of Nobah and Jogbehah, taking the Midianite army by surprise. Zebah and Zalmunna, the two Midianite kings, fled, but Gideon chased them down and captured all their warriors. After this, Gideon returned to the battle by the way of Harris Pass. There, he captured a young man from Succoth and demanded that he write down the names of all the 77 officials and elders in the town. Gideon then returned to Succoth and said to the leaders, "Here are Zebah and Zalmunna. When we were here before, you taunted me, saying, 'Catch Zebah and Zalmunna first, and then we will feed your exhausted army.'" Then Gideon took the elders of the town and taught them a lesson, punishing them with thorns and briars from the wilderness. He also tore down the tower of Peniel and killed all the men in the town. Then Gideon asked Zebah and Zalmunna, "The men you killed at Tabor, what were they like?" "Like you," they replied. "They all had the look of a king's son." "They were my brothers, the sons of my own mother," Gideon exclaimed. "As surely as the Lord lived, I wouldn't kill you if you hadn't killed them." Turning to Jether, his oldest son, he said, "Kill them." But Jether did not draw his sword, for he was only a boy and was afraid. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said to Gideon, "Be a man, kill us yourself." So Gideon killed them both and took the royal garments from their necks of their camels. Then the Israelites said to Gideon, "Be our ruler. You and your son and your grandson will be our rulers, for you have rescued us from Midian." But Gideon replied, "I will not rule over you, nor will my son. The Lord will rule over you. However, I do have one request, that each of you give me an earring from the plunder you collected from your fallen enemies." The enemies, being Ishmaelites, all wore gold earrings. "Gladly," they replied. They spread out a cloak, and each one threw in a gold earring he had gathered from the plunder. The weight of the gold earrings was 43 pounds, not including the royal ornaments and pendants, the purple clothing worn by the kings of Midian, or the chains around the necks of their camels. Gideon made a sacred ephod from the gold and put it in Ophrah. his hometown. But soon all the Israelites prostituted themselves by worshiping it, and it became a trap for Gideon and his family. That is the story of how people of Israel defeated Midian, which never recovered. Throughout the rest of Gideon's lifetime, about 40 years, there was peace in the land. Then Gideon, son of Joash, returned home. He had 70 sons born to him, for he had many wives. He also had a concubine in Shechem, who gave birth to a son, whom he named Abimelech. Gideon died when he was very old, and he was buried in the grave of his father Joash at Ophrah in the land of the clan of Abiezer. As soon as Gideon died, the Israelites prostituted themselves by worshiping the images of Baal, making Baal Berith their god. They forgot the Lord their God, who had rescued them from all their enemies surrounding them. Nor did they show any loyalty to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, despite all the good he had done for Israel. Chapter 9. One day, Gideon's son Abimelech went to Shechem to visit his uncles, his mother's brothers. He said to them and to the rest of his mother's family, "Ask the leading citizens of Shechem whether they want to be ruled by all 70 of Gideon's sons or by one man. And remember that I am your own flesh and blood." So Abimelech's uncles gave his message to all the citizens of Shechem on his behalf. And after listening to his proposal, the people of Shechem decided in favor of Abimelech because he was their relative. They gave him 70 silver coins from the temple of Baal Berith, which he used to hire some reckless troublemakers who agreed to follow him. He went to his father's home at Ophrah, and there, on one stone, they killed all 70 of his half-brothers, the sons of Gideon. But the youngest brother Jotham escaped and hid. Then all the leading citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo called a meeting under the oak beside the pillar at Shechem and made Abimelech their king. When Jotham heard about this, he climbed to the top of Mount Gerizim and shouted, "Listen to me, citizens of Shechem. Listen to me if you want God to listen to you. Once upon a time, the trees decided to choose a king. First they said to the olive tree, 'Be our king.' But the olive tree refused, saying, 'Should I quit producing the olive oil that blesses both people and God, just to wave back and forth over the trees?' Then they said to the fig tree, 'You be our king.' But the fig tree also refused, saying, 'Should I quit producing my sweet fruit, just to wave back and forth over the trees?' Then they said to the grapevine, 'You be our king.' But the grapevine also refused, saying, 'Should I quit producing the wine that cheers both God and people, just to wave back and forth over the trees?' Then all the trees finally turned to the thorn bush and said, 'Come, you be our king.' And the thorn bush replied to the trees, 'If you truly want to make me your king, come and take shelter in my shade. If not, let fire come out from me and devour the cedars at Lebanon.' Jotham continued, 'Now make sure you have acted honorably and in good faith by making Abimelech your king, and that you have done right by Gideon and all his descendants. Have you treated him with the honor he deserves for all he accomplished? For he fought for you and risked his life when he rescued you from the Midianites. But today you have revolted against my father and his descendants, killing his 70 sons on one stone. And you have chosen his slave woman's son, Abimelech, to be your king just because he is your relative. If you have acted honorably and in good faith toward Gideon and his descendants today, then may you find joy in Abimelech, and may he find joy in you. But if you have not acted in good faith, then may fire come out from Abimelech and devour the leading citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo. And may fire come out from the citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo and devour Abimelech. Then Jotham escaped and lived in Beer because he was afraid of his brother Abimelech. After Abimelech had ruled over Israel for 3 years, God sent a spirit that stirred up trouble between Abimelech and the leading citizens of Shechem, and they revolted. God was punishing Abimelech for murdering Gideon's 70 sons and the citizens of Shechem for supporting him in this treachery of murdering his brothers. The citizens of Shechem set an ambush for Abimelech on the hilltops and robbed everyone who passes that way. But someone warned Abimelech about their plot. One day, Gal, son of Ebed, moved to Shechem with his brothers and gained confidence of the leading citizens of Shechem. During the annual harvest festival at Shechem, held in the temple of the local god, the wine flowed freely, and everyone began cursing Abimelech. "Who is Abimelech?" Gal shouted. "He's not a true son of Shechem, so why should we be his servants? He's merely the son of Gideon, and this Zebul is merely his deputy. Serve the true sons of Hamor, the founder of Shechem. Why should we serve Abimelech? If I were in charge here, I would get rid of Abimelech. I would say to him, 'Get some soldiers and come out and fight.'" But when Zebul, the leader of the city, heard what Gal was saying, he was furious. He sent messengers to Abimelech in Arumah, telling him, "Gal, son of Ebed, and his brothers have come to live in Shechem, and now they are inciting the city to rebel against you. Come by night with an army and hide out in the fields. In the morning, as soon as it is daylight, attack the city. When Gal and those who are with him come out against you, you can do with them as you wish." So Abimelech and all his men went by night and split into 4 groups, stationing themselves around Shechem. Gal was standing at the city gates when Abimelech and his army came out of hiding. When Gal saw them, he said to Zebul, "Look, there are people coming down from the hilltops." Zebul replied, "It's just the shadows on the hills that look like men." But again Gal said, "No, people are coming down from the hills, and another group is coming down on the road past the diviner's oak." Then Zebul turned on him and asked, "Now where is that big mouth of yours? Wasn't it you who said, 'Who is Abimelech, and why should we be his servants?' The men you mocked are right outside the city. Go out and fight them." So Gal led the leading citizens of Shechem into battle against Abimelech. But Abimelech chased him, and many of Shechem's men were wounded and fell along the road as they retreated to the city gate. Abimelech returned to Arumah, and Zebul drove Gal and his brothers out of Shechem. The next day, as the people of Shechem went out into the fields to battle, when Abimelech heard about it, he divided his men into 3 groups and set an ambush in the fields. Then, when Abimelech saw the people coming out from the city, he and his men jumped up from their hiding places and attacked them. Abimelech and his group stormed the city gate to keep the men of Shechem from getting back in, while Abimelech's other 2 groups cut them down in the fields. The battle went on all day before Abimelech finally captured the city. He killed the people, leveled the city, and scattered salt all over the ground. When the leading citizens who lived in the tower of Shechem heard of what had happened, they ran and hid in the temple of Baal-berith. Someone reported to Abimelech that the citizens had gathered in the temple, so he led his forces to Mount Zalmon. He took an axe and chopped some branches from a tree, then put them on his shoulder. "Quick, do as I have done," he told his men. So each of them cut down some branches, following Abimelech's example. They piled the branches against the walls of the temple and set them on fire. So all the people who had lived in the tower of Shechem died, about 1,000 men and women. Then Abimelech attacked the town of Thebez and captured it. But there was a strong tower inside the town, and all the men and women, the entire population, fled to it. They barricaded themselves in and climbed up to the roof of the tower. Abimelech followed them to attack the tower, but as he prepared to set fire on the entrance, a woman on the roof dropped a millstone that landed on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. He quickly said to his young armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and kill me. Don't let it be said that a woman killed Abimelech." So the young man ran him through with his sword, and he died. When Abimelech's men saw that he was dead, they disbanded and returned to their homes. In this way, God punished Abimelech for the evil he had done against his father by murdering his 70 brothers. God also punished the men of Shechem for all their evil. So the curse of Jotham, son of Gideon, was fulfilled. Chapter 10. After Abimelech had died, Tola, son of Puah, son of Dodo, was the next person to rescue Israel. He was from the tribe of Issachar, but lived in the town of Shamir in the hill country of Ephraim. He judged Israel for 23 years. When he died, he was buried in Shamir. After Tola died, Jair from Gilead judged Israel for 22 years. His 30 sons rode around on 30 donkeys, and they owned 30 towns in the land of Gilead, which are still called the towns of Jair. When Jair died, he was buried in Canaan. Again, the Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight. They served the images of Baal and Ashtoreth and the gods of Aram, Sion, Moab, Ammon, and Philistia. They abandoned the Lord and no longer served him at all. So the Lord burned with anger against Israel, and he turned to them over to the Philistines and the Ammonites, who had begun to oppress them that year. For 18 years they oppressed all the Israelites east of the Jordan River in the land of the Amorites, that is, in Gilead. The Amorites also crossed to the west side of the Jordan and attacked Judah, Benjamin, and Ephraim. The Israelites were in great distress. Finally, they cried out to the Lord for help, saying, "We have sinned against you, and because we have abandoned you as our God, and we have served the images of Baal." The Lord replied, "Did I not rescue you from the Egyptians, the Amorites, the Ammonites, the Philistines, the Sidonians, the Amalekites, and the Moabites? When they oppressed you, you cried out to me for help, and I rescued you. Yet you have abandoned me and served other gods, so I will not rescue you anymore. Go and cry out to the gods you have chosen. Let them rescue you in your hour of distress." But the Israelites pleaded with the Lord and said, "We have sinned. Punish us as you see fit. Only rescue us today from our enemies." Then the Israelites put aside their foreign gods and served the Lord, and he was grieved by their misery. At that time, the armies of Ammon had gathered for war and were camped in Gilead, and the people of Israel assembled and camped at Mizpah. The leaders of Gilead said to each other, "Whoever attacks the Ammonites first will become ruler over all the people at Gilead." Chapter 11. Now Jephthah of Gilead was a great warrior. He was the son of Gilead, but his mother was a prostitute. Gilead's wife also had several sons, and when these half-brothers grew up, they chased Jephthah off the land. "You will not get any of your father's inheritance," they said, "for you are the son of a prostitute." So Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob. Soon he had a band of worthless rebels following him. At about this time, the Ammonites began their war against Israel. When the Ammonites attacked, the elders of Gilead sent for Jephthah in the land of Tob. The elders said, "Come and be our commander. Help us fight the Ammonites." But Jephthah said to them, "Aren't you the ones who hated me and drove me from my father's house? Why do you come to me now when you're in trouble?" "Because we need you," the elders replied. "If you lead us in the battle against the Ammonites, we will make you ruler over all the people of Gilead." Jephthah said to the elders, "Let me get this straight. If I come with you, and if the Lord gives me victory over the Ammonites, will you really make me ruler over all the people?" "The Lord is our witness," the elders replied. "We promise to do whatever you say." So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him their ruler, the commander of the army. At Mizpah, in the presence of the Lord, Jephthah repeated what he had said to the elders. When Jephthah sent messengers to the king of Ammon, asking, "Why have you come out to fight against my land?" the king of Ammon answered Jephthah's messengers, "When the Israelites came out of Egypt, they stole my land from the Arnon River to the Jabbok River and all the way down of the Jordan. Now then, give back the land peacefully." Jephthah sent this message back to the Ammonite king. "This is what Jephthah says. Israel did not steal any land from Moab or Ammon. When the people of Israel arrived at Kadesh on their journey from Egypt after crossing the Red Sea, they sent messengers to the king of Edom, asking for permission to pass through this land. But their request was denied. Then they asked the king of Moab for similar permission, but he wouldn't let them pass through either. So the people of Israel stayed in Kadesh. Finally, they went around Edom and Moab through the wilderness. They traveled along Moab's eastern border and camped on the other side of the Arnon River. But they never once crossed the Arnon River into Moab, for the Arnon was the border of Moab. Then Israel sent messengers to King Sihon of the Amorites, who ruled from Heshbon, asking for permission to cross through his land to get to their destination. But King Sihon didn't trust Israel to pass through his land. Instead, he mobilized his army at Jahaz and attacked them. But the Lord, the God of Israel, gave his people victory over King Sihon. So Israel took control of all the land of the Amorites, who lived in that region, from the Arnon River to the Jabbok River, and from the eastern wilderness of the Jordan. So you see, it was the Lord, the God of Israel, who took away the land from the Amorites and gave it to Israel. Why, then, should we give it back to you? You keep whatever your God Chemosh gives you, and we will keep whatever the Lord our God gives us. Are you any better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he try to make a case against Israel for disputed land? Did he go to war against them? Israel has been living here for 300 years, inhabiting Heshbon and its surrounding settlements, all the way to Aroer and its settlements, and in all the towns along the Arnon River. Why have you made no effort to recover it before now? Therefore, I have not sinned against you. Rather, you have wronged me by attacking me. Let the Lord, who is judge, decide today which of us is right, Israel or Ammon." But the king of Ammon paid no attention to Jephthah's message. At the time, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he went throughout the land of Gilead and Manasseh, including Mizpah in Gilead. And from there, he led an army against the Ammonites. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord. He said, "If you give me victory over the Ammonites, I will give to the Lord whatever comes out of my house to meet me when I return in triumph. I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering." So Jephthah led his army against the Ammonites, and the Lord gave him victory. He crushed the Ammonites, devastating about 20 towns from Aroer to an area near Minnith, and as far as Abel-Keramim. In this way, Israel defeated the Ammonites. When Jephthah returned home to Mizpah, his daughter came out to meet him, playing on a tambourine and dancing for joy. She was his one and only child. He had no other sons or daughters. When he saw her, he tore his clothes in anguish. " 'Oh, my daughter,' he cried. 'You have completely destroyed me. You have brought disaster on me. for I have made a vow to the Lord, and I cannot take it back." And she said, "Father, if you have made a vow to the Lord, you must do to me what you have vowed. For the Lord has given you a great victory over your enemies, the Ammonites. But first let me do this one thing. Let me go up and roam in the hills and weep with my friends for 2 months, because I will die a virgin." "You may go," Jephthah said, and he sent her away for 2 months. She and her friends went into the hills and wept, because she would never have children. When she returned home, her father kept the vow he had made, and she died a virgin. So it has become a custom in Israel for young Israelite women to go away for 4 days each year to lament the fate of Jephthah's daughter. Chapter 12. Then the people of Ephraim mobilized an army and crossed over the Jordan River to Zaphon. They sent this message to Jephthah: "Why didn't you call us to help you fight against the Ammonites? We are going to burn your house with you in it." Jephthah replied, "I summoned you at the beginning of the dispute, but you refused to come. You failed to help us in our struggle against Ammon. So when I realized you weren't coming, I risked my life and went to battle without you. And the Lord gave me victory over the Ammonites. So why have you come to fight me now?" The people of Ephraim responded, "You, men of Gilead, are nothing more than fugitives from Ephraim and Manasseh." So Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead and attacked the men of Ephraim and defeated them. Jephthah captured the shallow crossings of the Jordan River, and whenever a fugitive from Ephraim tried to go back across, the men of Gilead would challenge him. "Are you a member of the tribe of Ephraim?" they would ask. If the man said, "No, I'm not," they would tell him to say, "Shibboleth." If he was from Ephraim, he would say, "Sibboleth," because people from Ephraim cannot pronounce the word correctly. Then they would take him and kill him at the shallow crossing of the Jordan. In all, 42,000 Ephraimites were killed at that time. Jephthah judged Israel for 6 years. When he died, he was buried in one of the towns of Gilead. After Jephthah died, Ibzan from Bethlehem judged Israel. He had 30 sons and 30 daughters. He sent his daughters to marry men outside his clan, and he brought in 30 young women from outside his clan to marry his sons. Ibzan judged Israel for 7 years. When he died, he was buried at Bethlehem. After Ibzan died, Elon from the tribe of Zebulun judged over Israel for 10 years. When he died, he was buried at Aijalon in Zebulun. After Elon died, Abdon, son of Hillel from Pirathon, judged Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 donkeys. He judged Israel for 8 years. When he died, he was buried at Pirathon in Ephraim, in the hill country of the Amalekites. Chapter 13. Again, the Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight. So the Lord handed them over to the Philistines, who oppressed them for 40 years. In those days, a man named Manoah from the tribe of Dan lived in the town of Zorah. His wife was unable to become pregnant, and they had no children. The angel of the Lord appeared to Manoah's wife and said, "Even though you have been unable to have children, you will soon become pregnant and give birth to a son. So be careful. You must not drink wine or any other alcoholic drink, nor eat any forbidden food. You will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and his hair must never be cut, for he will be dedicated to God as a Nazirite from birth. He will begin to rescue Israel from the Philistines." The woman ran and told her husband, "A man of God appeared to me. He looked like one of God's angels, terrifying to see. I didn't ask where he was from, and he didn't tell me his name, but he told me, 'You will become pregnant and give birth to a son. You must not drink wine or any other alcoholic drink, nor eat any forbidden food, for your son will be dedicated to God as a Nazirite from the moment of his birth until the day of his death." Then Manoah prayed to the Lord, saying, "Lord, please let the man of God come back to us again and give us more instruction about this son who is to be born." God answered Manoah's prayer, and the angel of God appeared once again to his wife as she was sitting in the field. But her husband Manoah was not with her. So she quickly ran and told her husband, "The man who appeared to me the other day is here again." Manoah ran back with his wife and asked, "Are you the man who spoke to my wife the other day?" "Yes," he replied, "I am." So Manoah asked him, "When your words come true, what kind of rules should govern the boy's life and work?" The angel of the Lord replied, "Be sure your wife follows the instructions I gave her. She must not eat grapes or raisins, drink wine or any other alcoholic drink, or eat any forbidden food." Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "Please stay here until we can prepare a young goat for you to eat." "I will stay," the angel said, "but I will not eat anything. However, you may prepare a burnt offering as a sacrifice to the Lord." Manoah didn't realize it was the angel of the Lord. Then Manoah asked the angel of the Lord, "What is your name? For when all this comes true, we want to honor you." "Why do you ask my name?" the angel of the Lord replied. "It is too wonderful for you to understand." Then Manoah took a young goat and a grain offering and offered it on a rock as a sacrifice to the Lord. And as Manoah and his wife watched, the Lord did an amazing thing. As the flames from the altar shot up toward the sky, the angel of the Lord ascended in the fire. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell with their faces to the ground. The angel did not appear again to Manoah and his wife. Manoah finally realized it was the angel of the Lord, and he said to his wife, "We will certainly die, for we have seen God." But his wife said, "If the Lord were going to kill us, he wouldn't have accepted our burnt offering and grain offering. He wouldn't have appeared to us and told us this wonderful thing and done these miracles." When her son was born, she named him Samson. And the Lord blessed him as he grew up. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he lived in Mahane Dan, which is located between the towns of Zorah and Eshtaol. Chapter 14. One day when Samson was in Timnah, one of the Philistine women caught his eye. When he returned home, he told his father and mother, "A young Philistine woman in Timnah caught my eye. I want to marry her. Get her for me." His father and mother objected. "Isn't there even one woman in our tribe or among all the Israelites you could marry?" they asked. "Why must you go to the pagan Philistines to find a wife?" But Samson told his father, "Get her for me. She looks good to me." His father and mother didn't realize that the Lord was at work in this, creating an opportunity to work against the Philistines who ruled over Israel at that time. As Samson and his parents were going down to Timnah, a young lion suddenly attacked Samson near the vineyards of Timnah. At that moment, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, and he ripped the lion's jaw apart with his bare hands. He did it as easily as if it were a young goat, but he didn't tell his father or mother about it. When Samson arrived in Timnah, he talked with the woman and was very pleased with her. Later, when he returned to Timnah for the wedding, he turned off the path to look at the carcass of the lion. And he found that a swarm of bees had made some honey in the carcass. He scooped up some of the honey into his hands and ate it along the way. He also gave some to his father and mother, and they ate it. But he didn't tell him he had taken it from the honey of the carcass of the lion. As his father was making final arrangements for the marriage, Samson threw a party at Timnah, as was the custom for elite young men. When the bride's parents saw him, they selected 30 young men from the town to be his companions. Samson said to them, "Let me tell you a riddle. If you solve my riddle during these 7 days of the celebration, I will give you 30 fine linen robes and 30 sets of festive clothing. But if you can't solve it, then you must give me 30 fine linen robes and 30 sets of festive clothing." "All right," they agreed. "Let's hear your riddle." So he said, "Out of the one who eats came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet." 3 days later, they were still trying to figure it out. On the 4th day, they said to Samson's wife, "Entice your husband to explain the riddle for us, or we will burn down your father's house with you in it. Did you invite us to this party just to make us poor?" So Samson's wife came to him in tears and said, "You don't love me. You hate me. You have given my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer." "I haven't given the answer to my father or mother even," he replied. "Why should I tell you?" So she cried whenever she was with them and kept it up for the rest of the celebration. At last, on the 7th day, he told her the answer, because she was tormenting him with her nagging. Then she explained the riddle to the young men. So before sunset of the 7th day, the men of the town came to Samson with their answer. "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" Samson replied, "If you hadn't plowed with my heifer, you wouldn't have solved my riddle." Then the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. He went down to the town of Ashkelon, killed 30 men, took their belongings, and gave their clothing to the men who had solved his riddle. But Samson was furious about what had happened, and he went back home to live with his father and mother. So his wife was given in marriage to the man who had been Samson's best man at the wedding. Chapter 15. Later on, during the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat as a present to his wife. He said, "I'm going into my wife's room to sleep with her." But his father wouldn't let him. "I truly thought you must hate her," his father explained, "so I gave her in marriage to your best man. But look, her younger sister is even more beautiful than she is. Marry her instead." Samson said, "This time I cannot blame for everything I'm going to do to you Philistines." Then he went out and caught 300 foxes. He tied their tails together in pairs, and he fastened a torch to each pair of tails. Then he lit the torches and let the foxes run through the grain fields of the Philistines. He burned all their grain to the ground, including the sheaves and the uncut grain. He also destroyed their vineyards and olive groves. "Who did this?" the Philistines demanded. "Samson," was the reply, because his father-in-law from Timnah gave Samson's wife to be married to his best man. So the Philistines went and got the woman and her father and burned them to death. "Because you did this," Samson vowed, "I won't rest until I take my revenge on you." So he attacked the Philistines with great fury and killed many of them. Then he went to live in a cave in the rock of Edom. The Philistines retaliated by setting up camp in Judah and spreading out near the town of Lehi. The men of Judah asked the Philistines, "Why are you attacking us?" The Philistines replied, "We've come to capture Samson. We've come to pay him back for what he did to us." So 3,000 men of Judah went down to get Samson at the cave in the rock of Edom. They said to Samson, "Don't you realize the Philistines rule over us? What are you doing to us?" But Samson replied, "I only did to them what they did to me." But the men of Judah told him, "We have come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines." "All right," Samson said, "but promise that you won't kill me yourselves." "We will only tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines," they replied. "We won't kill you." So they tied him up with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. As Samson arrived to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting in triumph. But the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully over Samson. Then he snapped the ropes on his arms, as if they were burnt strands of flax. They fell from his wrists. Then he found the jawbone of a recently killed donkey. He picked it up and killed 1,000 Philistines with it. Then Samson said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, I've piled them in heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I've killed 1,000 men." When he finished his boasting, he threw away the jawbone in the place that was named Jawbone Hill. Samson was now very thirsty, and he cried out to the Lord, "You have accomplished this great victory by the strength of your servant. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of these pagans?" So God caused water to gush out of a hollow in the ground at Lehi, and Samson was revived as he drank. Then he named that place the spring of the one who cried out, and it is still in Lehi to this day. Samson judged Israel for 20 years during the period when the Philistines dominated the land. Chapter 16. One day, Samson went to the Philistine town of Gaza and spent the night with a prostitute. Word soon spread that Samson was there, so the men of Gaza gathered together and waited all night at the town gates. They kept quiet during the night, saying to themselves, "When the light of the morning comes, we will kill him." But Samson stayed in bed until only midnight. Then he got up, took hold of the doors of the town gate, including the 2 posts, and lifted them up, bar and all. He put them on his shoulders and carried them all the way to the top of the hill, across from Hebron. Sometime later, Samson fell in love with a woman named Delilah, who lived in the valley of Sorek. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "Entice Samson to tell you what makes him so strong, and how can he be overpowered and tied up securely? Then each of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Please tell me what makes you so strong, and what it would take to tie you up securely." Samson replied, "If I were tied up with 7 new bowstrings that have not yet been dried, I would become as weak as anyone else." So the Philistine rulers brought Delilah 7 new bowstrings, and she tied Samson up with them. She had hidden some men in one of the inner rooms of her house, and she cried out, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But Samson snapped the bowstrings as a piece of string snaps when it is burned by a fire. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Afterward, Delilah said to him, "You've been making fun of me and telling me lies. Now tell me, please, how can you be tied up securely?" Samson replied, "If I were tied up with brand new ropes that had never been used, I would become as weak as anyone else." So Delilah took new ropes and tied him up with them. The men were hiding in the inner room as before. And again Delilah cried out, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But again Samson snapped the ropes from his arms as if they were thread. Then Delilah said, "You've been making fun of me and telling me lies. Now tell me, how can you be tied up securely?" Samson replied, "If you were to weave the 7 braids of my hair into the fabric on your loom and tighten it with the loom shuttle, I would become as weak as anyone else." So while he slept, Delilah wove the 7 braids of his hair into the fabric. Then she tightened it with the loom shuttle. Again she cried out, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But Samson woke up and pulled back the loom shuttle and yanked his hair away from the loom and fabric. Then Delilah pouted. "How can you tell me I love you when you don't share your secrets with me? You've made fun of me 3 times now, and you still haven't told me what makes you so strong." She tormented him with her nagging day after day until he was sick to death of it. Finally, Samson shared his secret with her. "My hair has never been cut," he confessed, "for I was dedicated to God as a Nazirite from birth. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as anyone else. Delilah realized he had finally told her the truth, so she sent for the Philistine rulers. "Come back one more time," she said, "for he has finally told me his secret." So the Philistine rulers returned with the money in their hands. Delilah lulled Samson to sleep with his head in her lap. Then she called a man to shave off the 7 locks of his hair. In this way, she began to bring him down, and his strength left him. Then she cried out, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." When he awoke, he thought, "I will do as before and shake myself free." But he didn't realize the Lord had left him. So the Philistines captured him and gouged out his eyes. They took him to Gaza, where he was bound with bronze chains and forced to grind grain in the prison. But before long, his hair began to grow back. The Philistine rulers held a great festival, offering sacrifices and praising their god, Dagon. They said, "Our God has given us victory over our enemy Samson." When the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, "Our God has delivered our enemy to us. The one who killed so many of us is now in our power." Half drunk by now, the people demanded, "Bring out Samson so he can amuse us." So he was brought from the prison to amuse them, and they had him stand between the pillars supporting the roof. Samson said to the young servant who was leading him by the hand, "Place my hands against the pillars that hold up the temple. I want to rest against them." Now the temple was completely filled with people. All the Philistine rulers were there, and there were about 3,000 men and women on the roof who were watching as Samson amused them. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, "Sovereign Lord, remember me again. O God, please strengthen me just one more time. With one blow, let me pay back the Philistines for the loss of my 2 eyes." Then Samson put his hands on the 2 center pillars that held up the temple. Pushing against them with both hands, he prayed, "Let me die with the Philistines." And the temple crashed down on the Philistine rulers and all the people. So he killed more people when he died than he had during his entire lifetime. Later, his brothers and other relatives went down to get his body. They took him back home and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol, where his father Manoah was buried. Samson had judged Israel for 20 years. Chapter 17. There was a man named Micah who lived in the hill country of Ephraim. One day he said to his mother, "I heard you place a curse on the person who stole 1,100 pieces of silver from you." "Well, I have the money. I was the one who took it." "The Lord blesses you for admitting it," his mother replied. He returned the money to her, and she said, "I now dedicate these silver coins to the Lord. In honor of my son, I will have an image carved and an idol cast." So when he returned the money to his mother, she took 200 silver coins and gave them to a silversmith, who made them into an image and an idol. And these were placed in Micah's house. Micah set up a shrine for the idol, and he made a sacred ephod and some household idols. Then he installed one of his sons as his personal priest. In those days, Israel had no king. All the people did whatever deemed right in their own eyes. One day, a young Levite who had been living in Bethlehem in Judah arrived in that area. He had left Bethlehem in search of another place to live, and as he traveled, he came to the hill country of Ephraim. He happened to stop at Micah's house as he was traveling through. "Where are you from?" Micah asked him. He replied, "I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I am looking for a place to live." "Stay here with me," Micah said, "and you can be a father and priest to me. I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, plus a change of clothes and your food." The Levite agreed to this, and the young man became like one of Micah's sons. So Micah installed the Levite as his personal priest, and he lived in Micah's house. I know the Lord will bless me now, Micah said, because I have a Levite serving as my priest. Chapter 18. Now in those days, Israel had no king, and the tribe of Dan was trying to find a place where they could settle, for they had not yet moved into the land assigned to them when the land was divided among the tribes of Israel. So the men of Dan chose from their clans 5 capable warriors from the towns of Zorah and Eshtaol to scout out a land for them to settle in. When these warriors arrived in the hill country of Ephraim, they came to Micah's house and spent the night there. While at Micah's house, they recognized the young Levite's accent. So they went over and asked him, "Who brought you here, and what are you doing in this place? Why are you here?" He told them about his agreement with Micah, and that he had been hired as Micah's personal priest. Then they said, "Ask God whether or not our journey will be successful." "Go in peace," the priest replied, "for the Lord is watching over your journey." So the 5 men went on to the town of Laish, where they noticed the people living carefree lives. Like the Sidonians, they were peaceful and secure. The people were also wealthy because their land was very fertile, and they lived a great distance from Sidon and had no allies nearby. When the men returned to Zorah and Eshtaol, their relatives asked them, "What did you find?" The men replied, "Come on, let's attack them. We have seen the land. It is very good. What are you waiting for? Don't hesitate to go and take possession of it. When you get there, you will find the people living carefree lives. God has given us a spacious and fertile land, lacking in nothing." So 600 men from the tribe of Dan, armed with weapons of war, set out from Zorah and Eshtaol. They camped at a place west of Kiriath Jearim in Judah, which is called Manahe Dan to this day. Then they went on from there into the hill country of Ephraim and came to the house of Micah. The 5 men who had scouted out the land around Laish explained to the others, "These buildings contain a sacred ephod, as well as some household idols, a carved image, and a cast idol. What do you think you should do?" Then the 5 men turned off the road and went over to Micah's house, where the young Levite lived, and greeted him kindly. As the 600 armed warriors from the tribe of Dan stood at the entrance of the gate, the 5 scouts entered the shrine and removed the carved image, the sacred ephod, the household idols, and the cast idol. Meanwhile, the priest was standing at the gate with the 600 armed warriors. When the priest saw the men carrying all the sacred objects out of Micah's shrine, he said, "What are you doing?" "Be quiet and come with us," they said. "Be a father and a priest to all of us. Isn't it better to be a priest for an entire tribe and a clan of Israel than for the household of just one man?" The young priest was quite happy to go with them, so he took along the sacred ephod, the household idols, and the carved image. They turned and started on their way again, placing their children, livestock, and possessions in front of them. When the people from the tribe of Dan were quite a distance from Micah's house, the people who lived near Micah came chasing after them. They were shouting as they caught up with them. The men of Dan turned around and said to Micah, "What's the matter? Why have you called these men together and chased after us like this?" "What do you mean? What's the matter?" Micah replied. "You've taken away all the gods I have made, and my priest, and I have nothing left." The men of Dan said, "Watch what you say. There are some short-tempered men around here who might get angry and kill you and your family." So the men of Dan continued on their way. When Micah saw that there were too many of them for him to attack, he turned around and went home. Then, with Micah's idols and his priest, the men of Dan came to the town of Laish, whose people were peaceful and secure. They attacked with swords and burned down the town to the ground. There was no one to rescue the people, for they had lived a great distance from Sidon and had no allies nearby. This happened in the valley near Beth Rehob. Then the people of the tribe of Dan rebuilt the town and lived there. They renamed the town Dan after their ancestor, Israel's son, but it had originally been called Laish. Then they set up the carved image, and they appointed Jonathan, son of Gershom, son of Moses, as their priest. This family continued as priest for the tribe of Dan until the exile. So Micah's carved image was worshipped by the tribe of Dan as long as the holy tabernacle of God remained at Shiloh. Chapter 19. Now in those days, Israel had no king. There was a man from the tribe of Levi living in a remote area of the hill country of Ephraim. One day, he brought home a woman from Bethlehem in Judah to be his concubine. But she became very angry with him and returned to her father's home in Bethlehem. After about 4 months, her husband set out for Bethlehem to speak personally to her and to persuade her to come back. He took with him a servant and a pair of donkeys. When he arrived at her father's house, her father saw him and welcomed him. Her father urged him to stay a while, so he stayed 3 days, eating, drinking, and sleeping there. On the 4th day, the man was up early, ready to leave. But the woman's father said to his son-in-law, "Have something to eat before you go." So the 2 men sat down together and had something to eat and drink. Then the woman's father said, "Please stay another night and enjoy yourself." The man got up to leave, but his father-in-law kept urging him to stay. So finally he gave in and stayed the night. On the morning of the 5th day, he was up early again, ready to leave, and again the woman's father said, "Have something to eat, then you can leave later this afternoon." So they had another day of feasting. Later, as the man and his concubine and servants were preparing to leave, his father-in-law said, "Look, it's almost evening. Stay the night and enjoy yourself. Tomorrow you can get up early and be on your way." But this time the man was determined to leave. So he took his 2 saddled donkeys and his concubine and headed in the direction of Jebus, that is, Jerusalem. It was late in the day when they neared Jebus, and the man's servant said to him, "Let's stop at this Jebusite town and spend the night there." "No," his master said, "we can't stay in this foreign town where there are no Israelites. Instead, we will go on to Gibeah. Come on, let's try to get as far as Gibeah or Ramah, and we'll spend the night in one of those towns." So they went on. The sun was setting as they came to Gibeah, a town in the land of Benjamin. So they stopped there to spend the night. They rested in the town square, but no one took them in for the night. That evening, an old man came home from his work in the fields. He was in the hill country of Ephraim, but he was living in Gibeah, where the people were from the tribe of Benjamin. When he saw the travelers sitting in the town square, he asked them where they were from and where they were going. "We have been in Bethlehem in Judah," the man replied. "We are on our way to a remote area in the hill country of Ephraim, which is my home. I traveled to Bethlehem and now I'm returning home. But no one has taken us in for the night, even though we have everything we need. We have straw and feed for our donkeys and plenty of bread and wine for ourselves." "You are welcome to stay with me," the old man said. "I will give you anything you might need. But whatever you do, don't spend the night in the square." So he took them home with him and fed the donkeys. After they washed their feet, they ate and drank together. While they were enjoying themselves, a crowd of troublemakers from the town surrounded the house. They began beating at the door and shouting to the old man, "Bring out the man who is staying with you, so we can have sex with him." The old man stepped outside to talk to them. "No, my brothers, don't do such an evil thing. For this man is a guest in my house, and such a thing would be shameful. Here, take my virgin daughter and this man's concubine. I will bring them out to you, and you can abuse them and do whatever you like. But don't do such a shameful thing to this man." But they wouldn't listen to him. So the Levite took hold of his concubine and pushed her out the door. The men of the town abused her all night, taking turns raping her until the morning. Finally, at dawn, they let her go. At daybreak, the woman returned to the house where her husband was staying. She collapsed at the door of the house and lay there until it was light. When her husband opened the door to leave, there lay his concubine with her hands on the threshold. He said, "Get up, let's go." But there was no answer. So he put her body on his donkey and took her home. When he got home, he took a knife and cut his concubine's body into 12 pieces. Then he sent one piece to each tribe throughout all the territory of Israel. Everyone who saw it said, "Such a horrible crime has not been committed in all the time since Israel left Egypt. Think about it. What are we going to do? Who's going to speak up?" Chapter 20. Then all the Israelites were united as one man from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south, including those from across the Jordan in the land of Gilead. The entire community assembled in the presence of the Lord at Mizpah. The leaders of all the people and all the tribes of Israel, 400,000 warriors, armed with swords, took their positions in the assembly of the people of God. Word soon reached the land of Benjamin that the other tribes had gone up to Mizpah. The Israelites then asked how this terrible crime had happened. The Levite, the husband of the woman who had been murdered, said, "My concubine and I came to spend the night in Gibeah, a town that belongs to the people of Benjamin. That night, some of the leading citizens of Gibeah surrounded the house, planning to kill me, and they raped my concubine until she was dead. So I cut her body into 12 pieces and sent the pieces throughout the territory assigned to Israel. For these men have committed a terrible and shameful crime. Now then, all of you, the entire community of Israel must decide here and now what should be done about this." And all the people rose to their feet in unison and declared, "None of us will return home. No, not even one of us. Instead, this is what we will do to Gibeah. We will draw lots to decide who will attack it. 1/10 of the men from each tribe will be chosen to supply the warriors with food. And the rest of us will take revenge on Gibeah of Benjamin for this shameful thing they have done in Israel." So all the Israelites were completely united, and they gathered together to attack the town. The Israelites sent messengers to the tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What a terrible thing has been done among you. Give up those evil men, those troublemakers from Gibeah, so we can execute them and purge Israel of this evil." But the people of Benjamin would not listen. Instead, they came from their towns and gathered at Gibeah to fight the Israelites. In all, 26,000 of their warriors, armed with swords, arrived in Gibeah to join the 700 elite troops who lived there. Among Benjamin's elite troops, 700 were left-handed, and each of them would sling a rock and hit a target within a hair's breadth without missing. Israel had 400,000 experienced soldiers armed with swords, not counting Benjamin's warriors. Before the battle, the Israelites went to Bethel and asked God, which tribe should go first to attack the people of Benjamin? The Lord answered, "Judah is to go first." So the Israelites left early in the morning and camped near Gibeah. Then they advanced toward Gibeah to attack the men of Benjamin. But Benjamin's warriors, who were defending the town, came out and killed 22,000 Israelites on the battlefield that day. But the Israelites encouraged each other and took positions again at the same place they had fought the previous day. For they had gone up to Bethel and wept in the presence of the Lord until evening. They had asked the Lord, "Should we fight against our relatives from Benjamin again?" And the Lord had said, "Go out and fight against them." So the next day they went out again to fight against the men of Benjamin. But the men of Benjamin killed another 18,000 Israelites, all of whom were experienced with the sword. Then all the Israelites went up to Bethel and wept in the presence of the Lord and fasted until evening. They also brought burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord. The Israelites went up seeking direction from the Lord. In those days, the Ark of the Covenant of God was in Bethel, and Phinehas, son of Eleazar and grandson of Aaron, was the priest. The Israelites asked the Lord, "Should we fight against our relatives from Benjamin again, or should we stop?" The Lord said, "Go, tomorrow I will hand them over to you." So the Israelites set an ambush all around Gibeah. They went out on the third day and took their positions at the same place as before. When the men of Benjamin came out to attack, they were drawn away from the town, and as they had done before, they began to kill the Israelites. About 30 Israelites died in the open fields and along the roads, one leading to Bethel and the other leading back to Gibeah. Then the warriors of Benjamin shouted, "We're defeating them as we did before." But the Israelites had planned in advance to run away so that the men of Benjamin would chase them along the roads and be drawn away from the town. When the main group of Israelite warriors reached the Baal Tamar, they turned and took up their positions. Meanwhile, the Israelites hiding in ambush to the west of Gibeah jumped up to fight. There were 10,000 elite Israelite troops who advanced against Gibeah. The fighting was so heavy that Benjamin didn't realize the impending disaster. So the Lord helped Israel defeat Benjamin. And that day, the Israelites killed 25,100 of Benjamin's warriors, all of whom were experienced swordsmen. Then the men of Benjamin saw that they were beaten. The Israelites had retreated from Benjamin's warriors in order to give those hiding in ambush more room to maneuver against Gibeah. Then those who were hiding rushed in from all sides and killed everyone in the town. They had arranged to send up a large cloud of smoke from the town as a signal. When the Israelites saw the smoke, they turned and attacked Benjamin's warriors. By that time, Benjamin's warriors had killed about 30 Israelites, and they shouted, "We're defeating them, just as we did in the first battle." But when the warriors of Benjamin looked behind them and saw the smoke rising up into the sky from every part of the town, the men of Israel turned and attacked. At this point, the men of Benjamin became terrified because they realized disaster was close at hand. So they turned around and fled before the Israelites toward the wilderness. But they couldn't escape the battle, and the people who came out of the nearby towns were also killed. The Israelites surrounded the men of Benjamin and chased them relentlessly, finally overtaking them east of Gibeah. That day, 18,000 of Benjamin's strongest warriors died in battle. The survivors fled into the wilderness toward the rock of Rimmon, but Israel killed 5,000 of them along the road. They continued to chase until they had killed another 2,000 near Gidom. So that day the tribe of Benjamin lost 25,000 strong warriors armed with swords, leaving only 600 men who escaped to the rock of Rimmon, where they lived for 4 months. And the Israelites returned and slaughtered every living thing in all the towns, the people, the livestock, and everything they found. They also burned down all the towns they came to. Chapter 21. The Israelites had vowed at Mizpah, "We will never give our daughters in marriage to a man from the tribe of Benjamin." Now the people went to Bethel and sat in the presence of God until evening, weeping loudly and bitterly. "O Lord, God of Israel," they cried out, "why has this happened in Israel? Now one of our tribes is missing from Israel." Early the next morning, the people built an altar and presented their burnt offerings and peace offerings on it. Then they said, "Who among the tribes of Israel did not join us at Mizpah when we held our assembly in the presence of the Lord. At that time, they had taken a solemn oath in the Lord's presence, vowing that anyone who refused to come would be put to death. The Israelites felt sorry for their brother Benjamin and said, "Today, one of the tribes of Israel has been cut off. How can we find wives for the few who remain, since we have sworn by the Lord not to give them our daughters in marriage?" So they asked, "Who among the tribes of Israel did not join us at Mizpah when we assembled in the presence of the Lord?" And they discovered that no one from Jabesh Gilead had attended the assembly. For after they counted all the people, no one from Jabesh Gilead was present. So the assembly sent 12,000 of their best warriors to Jabesh Gilead with orders to kill everyone there, including women and children. "This is what you are to do," they said. "Completely destroy all males and every woman who is not a virgin." Among the residents of Jabesh Gilead, they found 400 young virgins who had never slept with a man, and they brought them to the camp at Shiloh in the land of Canaan. The Israelite assembly sent a peace delegation to the remaining people of Benjamin who were living at the rock of Rimmon. Then the men of Benjamin returned to their homes, and the 400 women of Jabesh Gilead who had been spared were given to them as wives. But there were not enough women for all of them. The people felt sorry for Benjamin because the Lord had made this gap among the tribes of Israel. So the elders of the assembly asked, "How can we find wives for the few who remain, since the women of the tribe of Benjamin are dead? There must be heirs for the survivors, so that the entire tribe of Israel is not wiped out. But we cannot give them our own daughters in marriage because we have sworn in a solemn oath that anyone who does this will fall under God's curse." When they thought of the annual festival of the Lord, held in Shiloh, south of Lebonah and north of Bethel, along the east side of the road that goes to Bethel to Shechem, they told the men of Benjamin who still needed wives, "Go and hide in the vineyards. When you see the young women of Shiloh come out for their dances, rush out from the vineyards, and each of you can take one of them home to the land of Benjamin to be your wife. And when their fathers and brothers came to us in protest, we will tell them, 'Please be sympathetic. Let them have your daughters, for we didn't find wives for all of them when we destroyed Jabesh Gilead. And you are not guilty of breaking the vow, since you did not actually give your daughters to them in marriage.' So the men of Benjamin did as they were told. Each man caught one of the women as she danced in the celebration and carried her off to be his wife. They returned to their own land, and they rebuilt their towns and lived in them. Then the people of Israel departed the tribes and families, and they returned to their own homes. In those days, Israel had no king, and all the people did whatever seemed right in their own eyes." The Book of Ruth, Chapter 1. In the days when the judges ruled in Israel, a severe famine came upon the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah left his home and went to live in the country of Moab, taking his wife and 2 sons with him. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. Their 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in the land of Judah. And when they reached Moab, they settled there. Then Elimelech died, and Naomi was left with her 2 sons. The 2 sons married Moabite women. One married a woman named Orpah, and the other a woman named Ruth. But about 10 years later, both Mahlon and Chilion died. This left Naomi alone, without her 2 sons or her husband. Then Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had blessed his people in Judah by giving them good crops again. So Naomi and her daughters-in-law got ready to leave Moab to return to their homeland. Her homeland. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she set out from the place where she had been living, and they took the road that would lead them back to Judah. But on the way, Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back to your mother's homes, and may the Lord reward you for your kindness to your husbands and to me. May the Lord bless you with the security of another marriage." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they all broke down and wept. "No," they said, "we want to go with you to your people." But Naomi replied, "Why should you go on with me? Can I still give birth to other sons who could grow up to be your husbands? No, my daughters, return to your parents' home, for I am too old to marry again. And even if it were possible, and I were to get married tonight and bear sons, then what? Would you wait for them to grow up and refuse to marry someone else? No, of course not, my daughters. Things are far more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord himself has raised his fist against me." And again they wept together. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. But Ruth clung tightly to Naomi. "Look," Naomi said to her, "your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. You should do the same." But Ruth replied, "Don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us." When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she said nothing more. So the 2 of them continued on their journey. When they came to Bethlehem, the entire town was excited by their arrival. "Is it really Naomi?" the women asked. "Don't call me Naomi," she responded. "Instead, call me Mara, for the Almighty has made life very bitter for me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me home empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has caused me to suffer, and the Almighty has sent such tragedy upon me?" So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by her daughter-in-law Ruth, the young Moabite women. They arrived in Bethlehem in late spring, at the beginning of the barley harvest. Chapter 2. Now there was a wealthy and influential man in Bethlehem named Boaz, who was a relative of Naomi's husband, Elimelech. One day, Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go into the harvest fields and pick up the stalks of grain left behind by anyone who is kind enough to let me do it." Naomi replied, "All right, my daughter, go ahead." So Ruth went out to gather grain behind in the harvest earths. And as it happened, she found herself working in a field that belonged to Boaz, the relative of her father-in-law Elimelech. While she was there, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem, and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you," he said. "The Lord bless you," the harvesters replied. Then Boaz asked his foreman, "Who is that young woman over there? Who does she belong to?" And the foreman replied, "She is the young woman from Moab who came back with Naomi. She asked me this morning if she could gather grain behind the harvesters. She has been hard at work ever since, except for a few minutes' rest in the shelter." Boaz went over and said to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter, stay right here with us when you gather grain. Don't go to any other fields. Stay right behind the young women working in my field. See which part of the field they are harvesting and then follow them. I have warned the young men not to treat you roughly. And when you are thirsty, help yourself to the water they have drawn from the well." Ruth fell at his feet and thanked him warmly. "What have I done to deserve such kindness?" she asked. "I am only a foreigner." "Yes, I know," said Boaz. "But I also know about everything you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. I have heard how you left your father and mother and your own land to live here among complete strangers. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done." I hope I can continue to please you, sir, she replied. You have comforted me by speaking so kindly to me, even though I am not one of your workers. At mealtime, Boaz called to her, Come over here and help yourself to some food. You can dip your bread in the sour wine. So she sat with his harvesters, and Boaz gave her some roasted grain to eat. She ate all she wanted and still had some left over. When Ruth went back to work again, Boaz ordered his young men, Let her gather grain right among the sheaves without stopping her, and pull out some heads of barley from the bundle, and drop them on purpose for her. Let her pick them up, and don't give her a hard time. So Ruth gathered barley there all day, and when she beat out the grain that evening, it filled an entire basket. She carried it back into town and showed it to her mother-in-law. Ruth also gave her the roasted grain that was left over from her meal. Where did you gather all this grain today? Naomi asked. Where did you work? May the Lord bless the one who helped you. So Ruth told her mother-in-law about the man in whose field she had worked. She said, The man I worked with today is named Boaz. May the Lord bless him, Naomi told her daughter-in-law. He is showing kindness to you, as well to your dead husband. That man is one of our closest relatives, one of our family redeemers. Then Ruth said, What's more, Boaz even told me to come back and stay with his harvesters until the entire harvest is completed. Good, Naomi exclaimed. Do as he said, my daughter. Stay with his young women right through the whole harvest. You might be harassed in other fields, but you'll be safe with him. So Ruth worked alongside the women in Boaz's fields and gathered grain with them until the end of the barley harvest. Then she continued working with them through the wheat harvest in early summer, and all the while she lived with her mother-in-law.
Ruth chapter 3. One day Naomi said to Ruth, My daughter, it's time that I find you a permanent home for you, so that you will be provided for. Boaz is a close relative of ours, and he's been very kind by letting you gather grain with his young woman. Tonight he will be wandering barely at the threshing floor. Now do as I tell you. Take a bath and put on a perfume and dress in your niece's clothes. Then go to the threshing floor. But don't let Boaz see you until he has finished eating and drinking. Be sure to notice where he lies down. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down there. He will tell you what to do. I will do everything you say, Ruth replied. So she went down to the threshing floor that night and followed the instructions of her mother-in-law. After Boaz had finished eating and drinking, and he was in a good spirit, he lay down at the far end of the pile of grain and went to sleep. Then Ruth came quietly, uncovered his feet, and laid down. Around midnight, Boaz suddenly woke up and turned over. He was surprised to find a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He asked. I am a servant, Ruth, she replied. Spread the corner of your covering over me, for you are my family redeemed. The Lord bless you, my daughter. Boaz explained. You are showing even more family loyalty now than you did before. For you have not gone after a younger man, or whether rich or poor. Now don't worry about a thing. My daughter, I will do what is necessary for everyone in town now. In town now knows you are a very good woman. But while it was true that I am one of your family redeemers, there is another man who is more closely relative to you than I am. Stay here tonight, and in the morning I will talk to him. If he is willing to redeem you, very well, let him marry you. But if he is not willing to, then I surely, as the Lord lives, I will redeem you myself. Now lay down here until morning. Ruth laid at Boaz's feet until the morning, but she got up before it was light enough for people to recognize each other. For Boaz had said, "No one must know that a woman was here at the threshing floor." Then Boaz said to her, "Bring your cloak, spread it out." He measured 6 scoops of barley into the cloak and placed it in on her back. Then he returned to the town. When Ruth went back to the mother-in-law, Naomi, she asked, What happened, my daughter?" Ruth told Naomi everything Boaz had done for her. And she added, "He gave me the 6 scoop of barley and said, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Then Naomi said to her, "Just be patient, my daughter, until we hear what happens. The man won't rest until he has settled things today." Chapter 4. Boaz went to the town gate and took a seat there. Just then a family redeemer he had mentioned came by. So Boaz called out to him, "Come over here and sit down, friend. I want to talk to you." So they sat down together. Then Boaz called 10 leaders from the town and asked them to sit as witness. And Boaz said to the family redeemer, "You know Naomi, who came back from a mob. She is selling the land that belongs to our relatives, Elimelech. I thought I should speak to you about it, so that you can redeem it if you wish. If you want the land, then buy it there in the presence of these witnesses. But if you don't want it, let me know right away, because I am next in line to redeem it after you." Then the man replied, "All right, I'll redeem it." Then Boaz told him, Of course you purchase of the land from Naomi. Also request that you marry Ruth, the Moabite widow, that way she can have a child who will carry on her husband's name and keep the land in the family." "Then I can't redeem it," family redeemer replied, "because this might endanger my own estate. You redeem the land, I cannot do it." Now, in those days, it was a custom in Israel for anyone to transfer a right of purchase to remove the sandal and hand it to the other party. The publicly availability and translations. So the other family redeemer drew off the sandal as he said, and has said to Boaz, "You buy the land." Then Boaz said to the elders and to the crowd standing around, "You are witness that today I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilona, and Mohal, and with the land I have acquired Ruth, the Moabite widow of Mohal, to be my wife. This way she can have a son to carry out the family name of her dead husband and to inherit the family property here in the hometown. You are all witness today." When the elders and all the people standing in the gate replied, "We are witness. May the Lord make this woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, from whom all the nations of Israel decided. May you prosper Ephraim, and be foremost in Bethlehem. And may the Lord give you descendants by this way, this young woman who will be like those who are ancestors of Perez and the son of Tamar and Judah. So Boaz took Ruth in at his home, and she became his wife. When he slept with her, the Lord enabled her to become pregnant, and she gave birth to a son. Then the woman of the town said to Naomi, "Praise the Lord, who has now provided a redeemer of your family. May this child be famous in Israel. May he restore your youth and care for you in the old age. For he is the son of your daughter-in-laws who loved you and has been better to you than 7 sons." Naomi took the baby and cuddled him to her breast, and she cared for him as if he were her own. A neighbor woman said, Now at last Naomi has a son again," and they named him Aban. He became the father of Jesse and the grandfather of David. This is the genealogical record of an ancestors of Perez. Perez was the father of Heron. Heron was the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Amminadab. Amminadab was the father of Nahash. Nahash was the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz. Boaz was the father of Obad. Obad was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of David. 1 Samuel chapter 1. There was a man named Almelech who lived in Ramah in the region of Zopah, in the hill country of Ephraim. He was the son of Jehoram, son of Elimelech, son of Tuphel, and son of Zuf. Elimelech had 2 wives, and Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah did not. Each year, Elkanah would travel to Shalom to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of Heaven's army at the tabernacle. The priests of the Lord on that time were the 2 sons of Eli, Ophni and Phinehas. On the days of Elkanah presented the sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to Peninnah and each of the children. And though he loved Hannah, he would give her only one choice of portions, because the Lord had given her no children. So Peninnah would turn to Hannah and make fun of her, because the Lord had kept her from having children. Year after year, it was the same. Peninnah would turn Hannah as they want to the tabernacle, and each time Hannah would reduce her tears and would not even eat. "Why are you crying, Hannah?" Elkanah would ask, Why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons? Once after the sacrifice meal of Shalom, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli was present. The priest was sitting at the customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in the deep anguish, crying and battling as she prayed to the Lord. And she made these vows: "O Lord of heaven and armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayers and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for the entire lifetime, and the sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord. Here, his hair will never be cut. As soon as she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her, seeing her lips moving but hearing no sound. He thought she had been drinking. "Must you come here and drink?" he demanded. "Throw away your wine." "Oh, no, sir," she replied. "I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger, but I am very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think that I am wicked woman, for I have been praying out the great anguish of sorrow." In that case, Eli said, "Go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him." "Oh, thank you, sir," she explained. Then she went back to begin begging to eat again, and she was no longer sad. Then the entire family got up earlier the next morning and went to worship the Lord once more. Then they returned home to Ramah. Then Elkanah slept at with Hannah, and the Lord remembered her appeal. And in due time she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, "I asked the Lord for him." The next year, Elkanah and his family went on the annual trip to offer the sacrifice to the Lord and to keep the vows. But Hannah did not go. She told her husband, "Wait until the boy is weaned, then I will take him to the tabernacle and leave him with the Lord permanently. Whatever you think is best, Elkanah agreed. "Stay here for now, and may the Lord help you keep your promise." So she stayed home and nursed the boy until he was weaned. When the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle in Shiloh. They brought along the 3-year-old bull for the sacrifice and the basket of flowers and some wine. After sacrificing the bull, they brought from the boy to Eli. "Sir, do you remember me?" Hannah asked. I am a very woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life." And they worshiped the Lord. Chapter 2. My heart rejoices in the Lord. The Lord has made me strong. Now I have an answer for my enemies. I rejoice because you have rescued me. No one is holy like the Lord. No one is holy like the Lord. There is no base beside you. There is no rock like you. Stop acting so proud of hunting. Don't speak with such arrogancy. For the Lord is a God of know that what you have done. He will judge your actions. The bow of the mighty is no broken, and those who stumble are now stronger, and those who fell had now starving, and those who were starving are now full. The childless woman now has 7 children, and the woman with many children wasn't wasted away. The Lord gave both death and life. He brings some down and brings some down from the grave to the grave, but raise others up. The Lord makes some poor and others rich. He brings some down and lifts others up. He lifts the poor from the dust, and he needs from the garbage dump. Then he sets them among princes, places them in a seat of honor. For all the earth is the Lord's, and He is set the world in order. He will protect His faithful ones, but the wicked will disappear in darkness. Now no one will succeed by strength alone. Those who fight against the Lord will be shattered. He thunders against them from heaven, and the Lord judges throughout the earth. He gives power to the king. He increases the strength of his anointed ones. Then Elkanah returned home to Ramah without Samuel. The boy served the Lord by assisting Eli the priest. Now his son of Eli was sandals who had no respect to the Lord or for their duties as a priest. Whenever anyone offered a sacrifice, Eli's son would send over a servant with a three-pronged fork. While the meat of the sacrifice animal was still boiling, the servant would stick the fork into the pot and demand that whatever it brought up to be given to Eli's son. All the Israelites who came to the worship at Shalom were threatened this way. Sometimes the servant would come even before the animals and fat and had been burnt on altar. He would demand rare meat before it had been boiled so that it would be used for roasting. A man offering the sacrifice might reply, "Take as much as you want, but the fat must be burnt first." Then the servant would demand, "No, give it to me now, or I'll take it by force." So the sin of those young men was very serious in the Lord's sight, for they retreated the Lord of Radiance with contempt. But Saul thought he was only the boy's servant for the Lord. He wore a linen garment like that of a priest. Each year his mother made a small coat for him and brought it to him with the same gold. Each year, mother would make the small coat for him and brought it to him when she came with her husband for the sacrifice. Before they returned home, Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and say, "May the Lord give you other children to take the place of this one." She gave to the Lord, and the Lord blessed Hannah, and conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Now Eli was very old, but he was aware of what his son was doing to the people of Israel. He knew of instances that the sons were seducing the young women who assisted at the entrance of the temple. Eli said to them, "I have been hearing reports from all the people about the wicked things you are doing. Why do you keep sinning? You must stop, my sons." He reported, "I am among the Lord of people are not good. If someone sin against others persons, God can meditate for the guilty of purity. But if someone sin against the Lord, who can intercept it?" But Eli's son wouldn't listen to their father, for the Lord has already planning to put them on to death. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew up taller and grew in a favor with the Lord and with the people. One day, a man of the God came to Eli and gave him his message from the Lord. I revealed myself to your ancestors when they and they are Pharaoh's slaves of Egypt. Choose your ancestors, Aaron, and among all of the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to offer sacrifice on my altar, to burn incense, and to wear the melodies of us as he served me. And I assigned the sacrifice of virgins to the priest. So why do you square God my sacrifice and offering? Why do you give your sons more honor than you give me? For you and they have become fat from the base of Prijah, friends, and of my people of Israel. Therefore, the Lord of God of Israel says, I promise that you, a branch of the tribe of Levi, would always be my priest. But I will honor those who honor me, and I will despise those who think lightly of me. The time is coming when I will put an end to your family, so it will no longer serve as my priest. All the members of your family will die before their time. None will reach old age. You will watch with everything envy as I pour out the prosperity of the people of Israel, but no members of your family will ever live out their days. The few, the, the few, the few not cut off from servants serving at my altar will survive, but only so far, so their eyes can go blind and their hearts breaks, and their children will die of violent death. And to provide that what I have said will come true, I will cause your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, to die on the same day. Then I will rise up and faithful and present who will serve me and do what I desire. I will establish his family, and they will be priest to my anointed kings forever. Then all of your serving families will bow before him, beginning from my begging for money and food. Please, they will say, give us a job among the presents so we will have enough to eat. Chapter 3. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel served the Lord by assisting Eli. Now in those days, the messenger from the Lord were very rare, and the vision were quite uncommon. One night, Eli, who was almost blind by now, had gone to bed. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was sleeping in a tabernacle near the ark of God. Suddenly the Lord called out, Samuel. Yes, Samuel replied. What is it? He got up and ran to Eli. Here I am. Did you call me? I didn't call you, Eli replied. Go back to bed. So he did. Then the Lord called out again, Samuel. Again Samuel got up and went to Eli. Here I am. Did you call me? I didn't call you, my son, Eli said. Go back to bed. Samuel did not yet know that the Lord, because he had never heard the message from the Lord before. So the Lord called a third time, and once more Samuel got up and went to Eli. Here I am. Did you call me? Then Eli realized it was the Lord who was calling the boy. So he said to Samuel, go and lay down again, and if someone calls you again, say, speak, Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. So Samuel went back to bed, and the Lord came and heard and called as before Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel replied, Speak, your servant is listening. And the Lord said to Samuel, I am about to do shocking things to Israel. I am going to carry out all my threats against Eli and his family, from beginning to the end. I have warned him that the judgment is coming upon his family forever, because his sons are blaspheming God. He hasn't disciplined them. So I have vowed that the sins of Eli and his sons will never be forgiven by the sacrifice or offering. Samuel stayed in bed until the morning. Then he got up and opened the door of the tabernacle. As is usual, he was afraid to tell Eli what the Lord had said to him. But Eli called out to him, Samuel, my son, here I am. Samuel replied, What did the Lord say to you? Tell me everything. May the God strike you and even kill you if you hide anything from me. So Samuel told Eli everything he did. Hold anything back. He didn't hold anything back. It is the Lord's will. Eli replied, Let him do what he thinks best. As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and everything Samuel said proved to be reliable. And then all of Israel, from then in the north to Baasha in the south, knew that Samuel was confirmed as a prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to approach in Shalom and gave message to Samuel there at the tabernacle, and Samuel's word went out to all the people of Israel. Chapter 4. At that time, Israel was at war with the Philistines and the Israelites. The armies were compared near Camp near Ambenza, and the Philistines were at Aphek. The Philistines attacked it and defeated the army of Israel, killing 4,000 men. After the battle was over, the troops retreated to their camp, and the elders of Israel asked, Why did the Lord allow us to defeat by the Philistines? Then they said, Let's bring the Ark of the Covenant to the Lord of Shalom. If we carry it out into the battle with us, it will serve us with our enemies. So they sent a man to Shalom to bring Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of Heavens. Armies, who is enthroned between the Caribbean, 14 and the Phoenicia. The sons of Eli were also there with the Ark of the Covenant of God. When all of the Israelites saw the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord coming into their camp, they shouted with joy. It was so loud it made the ground shake. What's going on? The Philistines asked. What's all the shouting about in the Hebrew camps? When they were told it was because Ark of the Covenant, Ark of the Lord had arrived, they panicked. The gods have come into the camp, they cried. This is a disaster. We have never had to face anything like this before. Help! Who can save us from these mighty gods of Israel? They are the same gods who destroyed the Egyptians with plagues, and Israel was in the wilderness. Fight as never before, Philistines. If you don't We will become the Hebrews' slaves just as they have been ours. Stand up like men and fight. So the Philistines fought desperately, and Israel was defeated again. The slaughter was greater. 30,000 Israeli soldiers died in that day. The survivors turned and filled to their tents. Ark of the Covenant was captured, and the Philistines and Hophni and Phinehas had two sons of Eli were killed. A man from the tribe of Benjamin ran from battle and arrived in Shalom later that same day. He had torn his clothes and put dust on his head to show a grief. Eli was waiting beside the road to hear the news of the battle, for the heart of him trembled for his safety, the ark of God. When the messenger arrived and told what had happened, an outcrying resounded throughout the town. What is all the noise about? Eli asked. The messenger rushed over to Eli, who was the 98-year-old blind. He said to Eli, I have just come from the battlefield. I was there this very day. What has happened, my son? Eli demanded. Israel has been defeated by the Philistines, and the messenger replied, the people have been slaughtered, and your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were also killed. And the Ark of the Covenant, Ark of God, has been captured. When the messenger mentioned what had happened to the Ark of God, Eli fell backwards from his seat beside the gate. He broke his neck and died. For he was old and overweight. He had been Israel's judgment for the 40 years. Eli's daughter-in-law, the wife Phinehas, was pregnant and near her time for delivery. When she heard that the Ark of God had been captured and that the father-in-law and husband were dead, she went into the labor and gave birth. She died in the childbirth, but before the passed away, the midwives tried to encourage her. Don't be afraid, they said. You have a baby boy. But she did not answer or pay attention to them. She named the child Ikahud, which means where is the glory? For she said, Israel's glory is gone. She named him this because the Ark of God had been captured, and because her father-in-law and husband were dead. Then she said, the glory has departed from Israel, for the Ark of God has been captured. Chapter 5. After the Philistines captured the Ark of God, they took it from the battleground at Ambenza to the town of Ashdod. They carried the Ark of God into the temple of Dagon and placed it beside the idol of Dagon. But when the citizens of Ashdod went to see it the next day morning, Dagon had fallen within the face to the ground in front of the Ark of the Lord. So they took the Dagon and put him in a place again. But the next morning, the same thing happened. The Dagon had fallen face down before the Ark of the Lord. This time, his head and hand had broken off and was lying in the doorway. Only the trunk of the body was left intact. That is why, to this day, neither the priest of the Dagon nor anyone who enters into the temple of the Dagon in Ashdod will step on its shepherd. Then the Lord's heavy hand struck the people of Ashdod and the nearby village with a plunge of tumult. When the people realized what was happening, they cried out, "We can't keep the ark of God of Israel here any longer. He is against us. We will be destroyed along with the Dagon, our gods." So they called together the rulers of the Philistine towns and asked, "What should we do with the ark of the Lord, of God of Israel?" The rulers discussed it and replied, "Move it to the town of Gath." So they moved the ark of God. Moved, so they moved the ark of God of Israel to Gath. But when the ark arrived at Gath, the Lord's heavy hand fell on them, on its men, young and old. He struck them with a plunge of sermons, and there was a great panic. So they sent the ark of God to the town of Ekron. But when the people of Ekron saw it coming, they cried out, "They are bringing the ark of God of Israel here to kill us too." The people summoned the Philistine rulers again and began them and begged them, "Please send the ark of the Lord of God of Israel back to its own country, and it will kill us. It will kill us all." For the deadly plans of the God had already begun, and a great fear was sweeping across the town. Those who didn't die were affected with torments, and the cry for the town raised to heaven. Chapter 6. Ark of the Lord remained in the Philistine territory 7 months in all. Then the Philistines called in the priests and divines and asked them, "What should we do about the ark of the Lord? Tell us how to return it to our own country." "Send the ark of the God of Israel back with the gift," they were told. "Send a gull, an offering, so that the plunge will stop. Then, if you are held, you will know it was his hand that causes the plunge." What sort of gull offering should we send?" they asked. And they were told, "Since the plunge had struck both you and your first rulers, make 5 gold sermons and 5 gold rats, and just like those have revenge on land, revenge on the land. Make these things to show honor to the God of Israel. Perhaps then he will stop afflicting you, your gods, and your land. Don't be stubborn and rebellions of Philistines as refer of Egyptians were. By the time God was finished with them, they were eager to let Israel go. "Now build a new cart and find 2 cows that just given birth to a calf. Make sure the cows have never been yoked to the cart. Each cow to the cart, but shut their calves away from them in the pen. Put the ark of the Lord on the cart, and beside it place the chest containing gold rats and the gold turbans you are sending. As a guilt offering, then let the cows go whenever they want. If they cross the border of our land and go to Beth Shemesh, we will know it was the Lord who brought this great disaster upon us. If they don't, we will know it was not the hand of the crushed caused the plans. It comes simply by chance." These instructions were carried out to cows were hitched to the cart, and the new-born calves were shut up in the pen. Then the ark of the Lord and the crest and the chest containing the gold threads and the gold ornaments were placed on the cart. And sure enough, without wearing off in the other direction, the cows went straight along the road towards the Bethshemesh, lowing as they went. The Philistines' rulers followed them as far as the border of Damesh, and the people of Damesh, Bethshemesh, were harvesting wheat in the valley, and when they saw the ark, they were overjoyed. The cart came into the field of a man named Joshua and stopped beside a large rock. So the people broke up the wood and the cart for the fire, and killed the cows and sacrificed them to the Lord as they burnt offering. But of several men of the tribe of Levi lifted the ark of the Lord and the chest containing the gold rods and the gold ornaments from the cart and placed them on the large rock. Many sacrifices and burnt offerings were offered to the Lord that day by the people of Beth-Meshesh. The 5 Philistine rulers watched all this and then returned to Aaron that same day. The 5 gold termites sent by the Philistines and as a quail offering to the Lord were gifts from the rulers of Ashur. Gaza, Ashkol, Gather, and Ekron. The 5 gold rats represented the 5 Philistine towns and their surrounding village, which were controlled by the 5 rulers. The large rock at the Beth-Shalmesh, where they are set, the ark of the Lord, still stands in that field of Joshua as the witness to what happened there. But the Lord killed 70 men from their beshwas because they looked into the ark of the Lord, and the people mourned greatly because of what the Lord had done. Who is able to stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? They cried out. Where can we send the ark from here? So they sent the messenger to the people at Kiriath Jearim, and told them, the Philistines have returned the ark of God. Come here and get it. Chapter 7. So the men Kiriath Jearim came to get the ark of the Lord. They took it to the hillside home of Aminadab and Adonai Eleazar. His son will be charge of it. The ark remained in Kiriath Jearim for a long time, 20 years in all. During that time, all the Israelites mourned because it seemed the Lord had abandoned them. Then Samuel said to all the people of Israel, if you want to return to the Lord with all your hearts, get rid of the young foreign goods, and the image of Sharathon turns your heart to the Lord and obey him alone. When he will rescue you from the Philistines. So the Israelites got rid of the image of the Baal and Ashtor, and they worshipped only the God. Then Samuel told them, gather all of Israel to Moshe, and I will pray to the Lord for you. So they gathered at the marathon, and the great ceremony drew water from a wall and produced it out before the Lord. They also went without food all day and confessed that they had sinned against the Lord. It was Maswed and Samuel became Israel's judge. When the Philistine rulers heard that the Israelites had gathered in Maswed, they mobilized their army and advanced. The Israelis were abundantly frightened when they learned that the Philistines were approaching. Don't stop pleading with the Lord our God to save us from the Philistines. They began begging Samuel. Samuel took a young lamb and offered to the Lord as a whole burnt offering. He filled it with the Lord to help Israel, and the Lord answered him. Just as Samuel was sacrificing the burnt offering, Philistines arrived to attack Israel. But the Lord spoke with a mighty voice, thunder from heaven that day, and the Philistines were thrown into such a confusion that the Israelites defeated them. And the men of Israel chose them to Masphas, the place below the birth of Bethkar, slating them all along the way. Samuel then took a large stone and placed it between the towns of Masphas and Jeshannes. He named it Benaz, which means this stone of help. For he said, up to this point the Lord has helped us. So the Philistines were stubborn and didn't invite Israel again for the same time. And throughout Samuel's lifetime, the Lord's powerful hand was raised against the Philistines. The Israelites' village near Akron had gathered that the Philistines had captured were restored to Israel along with the rest of the territory the Philistines had taken, and there was a peace between Israel and the Amorites in those days. Samuel continued in Israel judge for the rest of his life. Each year, he traveled around, setting up a court first at the Bethel and the Gilgal, and then at Mahaspur. The judge of the people of Israel at each of these places, and then he would return to his home of Ramah, and he would hear here too. And Samuel built an altar on the Lord's remand. Chapter 8. As Samuel grew older, he appointed his son to be a judge over Israel, Joel and Abijah. His older son held a court in Beersheba, but they were not like their father, for they were greedy for money, and they accepted the bribe and provided justice. Finally, all of the elders of Israel met Ramah to discuss the matter of Samuel. Look, they told him, you are now old, and your sons are not like you. Give us a king to judge as like all of other nations have. Samuel was displeased with the request and went to the Lord for guidance. For he do everything they say to you. The Lord replied, for they are rejecting me now to you. They don't want me to be their king any longer. Even since I brought them from Egypt, they have continued abandoned me and following other gods. And now they are giving you the same treatment. Do as they ask, but firmly warn them about the way the king will regain them over them. So Samuel passed on the Lord's warning to the people who were asking him for asked for a king. This is how the king will regain over you, Samuel said. The king will draft your son and assist them into his carrots and carroties. Make them run before the carroties, and some will be gradually and captains, generals and captains in this army. Some will be forced to plow in the fields and harvest in the crops, and some will make his weapon and characters and equipment. The king will take your daughters from you and force them to cook and bake and make perfumes for them. He will take away the best of your field, best of the fields, and have vineyards and olive groves, and give them to his own officers. He will take tenths of your grain and your grape, and harvest and distribute it among the officers and attendants. He will take your male and female slaves and demand the first of your cattle and donkeys for his own use. He will demand tenth of your flocks, and you will be his slaves. When that day comes, you will beg for your relief for his king you're demanding. But the Lord will not help you. But the people refused to listen to Samuel's warning. When so, we still want the king, they said. We want to be like the nations around us. Our king will judge us and lead us into the battle. Samuel repeated to the Lord what the people had said, and the Lord replied, Do as I say and give them a king. Then Samuel agreed and sent the people home. 1 Samuel chapter 9. There was a wealthy, influential man named Kish, from the tribe of Benjamin. He was the son of Abil, son of Ezero, son of Bechorath, son of Aphria, and the tribe of Benjamin. His son Saul was the most handsome man in Israel, and had soldiers taller than anyone else in the land. One day Kishon's donkeys traded away, and he told Saul, Take a servant with you and go look for the donkey. So Saul took one of the servants and traveled throughout the hill countries of Ephraim in the land of Shalisham in the Shalisham area, and the entire land of Benjamin. But they couldn't find the donkey anywhere. Finally, they entered the region of Joppa, and the Saul said to the servant, Let's go home. By now the father will be more worried about us than the donkeys. But the servant said, I've just thought of something. There is a man of God who lives here in this town. He is held in the higher honor by all the people, because everything he says comes true. Let's go and find him. Perhaps he can tell us where. Perhaps he can tell us which way to go. But we don't have anything to offer him. Saul replied, Even our food is gone, and we don't have anything to give him." "Well," the servant said, "I have some small silver piece. We can at least offer it to the man of God and see what happens." In those days, if people wanted message from God, they would say, let's go and ask for seer, perhaps used to be called seers. The prophets used to be called seers. "All right," Saul agreed. Let's try. Let's try it." So they started into the town where the man of God lived. As they were climbing the hill of town, they met some young woman coming out to draw water. So Saul, Saul and his servant asked, "Is a seer here today?" "Yes," they replied. Stay right here. Stay right on the road. He is he is he is in his town gate. He is at the town gate. He has just arrived to take part in the public sacrifice up at the place of the worship. Hurry and catch him before he goes up to eat. The guest won't be eating until he arrives to bless the food." So they entered the town and they passed through a gate. Through the gate, Samuel was coming out to the word towards them to go up and place to worship. Now the Lord had told Samuel the previous day, "About this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him to be the leader of all people of Israel. He will rescue them from the Philistines, for I have looked down on many people in mercy and have heard their cry." Then Samuel saw Saul, and the Lord said, "What's the man told? One, that's the man I told you about. He will rule my people." Just then Saul approached Samuel at the gateway and asked, "Can you please tell me where Seer's house is?" "I am Seer," Samuel replied. "Go up to the place of worship ahead of me. We will eat there together. And in the morning I'll tell you what you want to know and send you on your way. And don't worry about those donkeys that they were lost 3 days ago, for they had been found. And I am here to tell you that you and your family are the focus of Israel's hopes." Samuel replied, "But I am only from the tribe of Benjamin, the smallest tribe of Israel, and my family in the last important of all of the families of the tribe. Why are you talking like this to me?" Then Samuel brought Saul and his servants into the hall and placed them on the head of the table, honoring them above the hearty special guest. Samuel then instructed the cook to bring Samuel the finest cut of meats, the piece that had been set aside for the guest of honor. So he brought in the meat and placed it before Saul. "Go ahead and eat it," Saul said. "I was saving it for you even before I invited those others." So Samuel ate with Saul ate with Samuel that day. When they came down from the place of the worship and returned to town, Samuel took Saul up to the roof of the house and prepared a bed for him there. At the daybreak the next morning, Samuel called out, "Saul, get up! It's time you were on your way." So Saul got ready, and And Samuel left the house together. When they reached at the edge of town, Samuel told Saul to send his servant on ahead. After the servant was gone, Samuel said, "Stay here, for I have received a special message for you from God." Chapter 10. Then Samuel took the flakes of olive oil and poured it over Saul's head. He kissed Saul and said, "I am doing this because the Lord has appointed you to be ruler of Israel, his special positions. When you leave me today, you will see two men beside the Rachel's tomb at Zelzah on the border of Benjamin. They will tell you that their donkeys have been found and that your father has stopped worrying about them, and he is now worried about you. He is asking, 'Have you seen my son?' When you get to the oak of Tobo, you will see three men coming towards you who are on their way to worship God at the Bethel. One will be bringing 3 young goats, the other will have 3 loaves of bread, and the third will carry a the wine skin full of wine. They will greet you and offer you 2 loaves of bread, 2 loaves, which you are not to accept. When you arrive at Gibeah of God, where the garrisons of the Philistines is located, you will meet a band of prophets coming down from a place of worship. They will be playing ahead, a tabor, a flute, and an lyre, and they will be prophesying. At that time, the Spirit of the Lord will come powerful upon you, and you will prophesy with them. You will be changed into a different person. After these signs take place, do what must be done, for God is with you. Then go down to Gilgal and head of me. I will join you there to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace of offering. You must wait for 7 days until arrive, and I give you further instructions. As Saul turned and started to live, God gave him a new heart and soul, and all Samuel's signs were fulfilled that day. Then Saul and his servant arrived at Gilgal, Gibeah. They saw the group of prophets coming towards them. Then the Spirit of God came powerful upon Saul, and he too began to prophesy. When those who knew Saul heard about it, they explained, What is he even Saul a prophet? How did the son of Kish become prophet? And one of those standing there said, Can anyone become a prophet, no matter who is his father? So that is the origin of the saying is, even Saul a prophet. When Saul had finished prophesying, he went up onto the place of worship. Where have you been? Saul's uncle asked him and the servant. We were looking for the donkeys, Saul replied, but we didn't find them. So we went to Samuel to ask him where they were. Oh, and what did he say? His uncle asked. He told us that the donkey has already been found. Saul replied, but Saul didn't tell his uncle what Samuel had about the kingdom. Later Samuel told the people of Israel, to meet before the Lord at Mizpah. And he said, This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, has declared. I brought you from Egypt and rescued you from the Egyptians and from all of the nations that you were opposing you. But though I have rescued you from your misery, distress, and distress, you have rejected your God, and today have said, No, we want a king instead. Now therefore present yourself before the Lord and by tribe of tribes. So Samuel brought all the tribes of Israel before the Lord, and the tribe of Benjamin was consent by lot. And they brought each family of the tribe of Benjamin before the Lord, and the family of Matras was chosen. And finally, Saul, son of Kishnan, was chosen from among them. But when they looked for him, he had disappeared. So they asked the Lord, Where is he? Where is he? And the Lord replied, He is hiding among the baggage. So they found him and brought him out, and he stood head and shoulders above anyone else. Then Saul said to all the people, This is the man the Lord has chosen as your king. No one is all Israel is like him. And all the people shouted, Long live the king. And Samuel told the people what the rights and duties of the king were. He wrote them down on a scroll and placed it before the Lord. Then Samuel sent the people home again. When Samuel returned to the home at Gaphia, a group of men whose hearts God had touched went with him. But there were some Congolese who complained, How can this man save us? And they scolded him and refused to bring him gifts, but Saul ignored them. Nahash, king of Ammonites, had been generously opposing the people of God and rebellion of his life, the state of Jordan River. He gouged out the right eye of each of Israelites living and there, and he didn't allow anyone to come and rescue him. In fact, of all the Israelites east of Jordan and the west, single one whose right eye Nashas had not gouged out, but there were 7,000 men who had escaped from the Ammonites, and they had settled in Jordash Glad. Chapter 11. About a month later, King Nashas of Ammon led army against the Israelites. Israel's town of Jordash fell. But all the citizens of Jordash asked for peace. Make a treaty with us, and we will be servants. They pleaded. All right, the national said, but only on one condition. I will gouge out your right eye of every one of you as you disagrees to all Israel. Give us even a day to send messengers throughout Israel. Replace these idols and Joshua. If no one comes to save us, we will agree to your items, the terms. When the messenger came to the Gibeah of Saul and told the people about the plagues, everyone broke into tears. Saul had been plowing a field with the ox, and when he returned to town, he asked, What is the matter? Why is everyone crying?" So they told him about the messenger of Jabesh. Then the Spirit of God came powerful upon Saul, and he became very angry. He took 2 ox and cut them into pieces, and sent the messenger to carry them throughout Israel with his messenger. This is what will happen to ox of anyone who refuses to follow Saul and Saul into the battle. And the Lord made the people afraid of Saul and allowed them to come out together as one. When Saul mobilized them, the Berzec, he found that there were 3,000 men from Israel and 30,000 men from Judah. So Saul sent the messengers back to Jabash's girl to say, "We will rescue you by noontime tomorrow." There was a great joy throughout the town when the messenger arrived. Then the men of Jabesh then told their enemies, "Tomorrow we will come out to you, and you can do to us whatever you wish." Before dawn the next morning, Saul arrived, having divided his armies into 3 detachments, and he launched a surprise attack against Ammonites and slaughtered them. The whole morning, the remnants of his armies was suddenly badly scattered, that only 2 of them were left together. And the people explained to Samuel, "Now where are those men who said, 'Why should Saul rule over us?' Bring them here, and we will kill them." But Saul replied, "No one will be excluded today, for today the Lord has rescued Israel." Then Samuel said to the people, Come, let us all go to Gilgal to renew the kingdom." So they all went to Gilgal, and in the ceremony before the Lord, they made Saul king. Then they offered the peace offering to the Lord, and Saul and all the Israelites were filled with joy. Chapter 12. Then Samuel addressed all Israel, "I have done as you asked, and give you a king. Your king is now your leader, and stand here before you, an older gray-haired man. And my sons serve you. I have served as your leader for the time I was a boy. To this very day, now testify against me in the presence of the Lord, and before the Anointed One, whose ox or donkey have I stolen? Have I ever cheated on any of you? Have I ever processed you? Have I ever taken a bribe and presented justice? Tell me, and I will make right whatever I have done wrong." "No," they replied, "you have never cheated or oppressed us, and you have never taken even a single tribe. The Lord and his anointed one are my witness today." Samuel declared that my hands are clean. "Yes, he is a witness," they replied. "It was the Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron." Samuel continued, He brought your ancestors out of the land of Egypt. Now stand here quietly before the Lord as I reminded you of all the great things the Lord has done for you and your ancestors. When the Israelites were in Egypt, they cried out for the Lord, He sent Moses and Aaron to rescue them from Egypt and to bring them into this land. But the people soon forgot about the Lord the Lord their God. So they handed them over to Caesar and the commander of Hazael's army, and also the Philistines, and to the king of Moab, who fought against them. Then they cried to the Lord again, command and confessed, "We have sinned by turning away from God and turning away from God, the Lord, turning away from God and worshiping images of Baal and Ashtaroth, Ashtaroth. But we will worship you and you alone. In you will rescue us from the enemies." Then the Lord sent Gadon, Japhia, and Saul to serve you, and you lived in safety. But but you were afraid of nations and the king of Ammon, you came to me and said that you wanted a king and regain over you, even though the Lord your God was already your king. All right, here is the king you have chosen. You asked for him, and the Lord has granted you your request. Now, if you fear and worship the Lord, and listen to his voice, and if you do not rebel against the Lord, your commandments, then both you and your king will show that recognizing the Lord as your God. But if you rebel against the Lord's command and refuse to listen to him, then his hand will be as heavy upon you as it was upon your ancestors. Now stand here and see the great things the Lord is about to do. You know that it does not rain this time of the year. During this wheat harvest, I will ask the Lord to send thunder and rain today. Then you will realize how wicked you have been asking the Lord for a king. So Samuel called unto the Lord, and the Lord sent thunder and rain that day. And all the people were terrified of the Lord and Samuel. Pray to the Lord your God for us, or we will die, they all said. So to Samuel, for now we have added to our sinners by asking our king. Don't be afraid, Samuel resolved them. You have certainly done wrong, but make sure now that you worship the Lord with all your heart and don't turn your back on him. Don't go back to worshiping worthless idols that cannot help or rescue you. They are to rely yourself. The Lord will not abandon these people because that would dishonor the great names. For it has pleased the Lord to make you his every own people. As for me, I will certainly not sin against the Lord by ending the praise of you, and I will continue to teach you what is good and what is right. But be sure to fear the Lord and faithfully serve him. Think of all the wonderful things he has done for you. But if you continue to sin, you and the king will be swept away. Chapter 13. Saul was 30 years old when he became a king, and then regained for 40 years. Saul selected 3,000 special troopers from the army of Israel and sent the rest to the men home. He took 2,000 of the chosen men with him to Machman, and he hill country, in the hill country of Bethlehem. The other 1,000 went with Saul, son of Jonathan, to Giddah, in the land of Benjamin. Soon after this, Jonathan attacked and defeated the garrisons of the Philistines in Geba. The news spread quickly among the Philistines. So Saul blew the rams of horn and throughout the land, saying, "The Hebrews hear this. Rise up in your revolt. All this Israel had a news of that Saul had destroyed the Philistines' regions and Geba, and that the Philistines now hated the Israelites more than ever. So then the entire Israelite army was summoned to join Saul in Gilgal. The Philistines mustered a mighty army of 3,000 chariots and 6,000 chariots, and the army, and as many warriors as the grains of sand on this seashore. They compared the maximums east of Bethhaven. The men of Israel saw what a tight spot they were in, and because they were hard pressed by the army, they tried to hide in caves, thick rocks, and holes and caverns. Some of them crossed the Jordan River and escaped into the land of Gad and Gilgal. Meanwhile, Saul stayed in Gilgal, and then his men were trembling with fear. Saul waited there 7 days for Samuel, as Samuel had instructed him earlier. But Saul still didn't come. Saul realized that his troopers were repeatedly slipping away. So he demanded, "Bring me a burnt offering and a peace of offering." And Saul sacrificed the burnt offering himself. Just as Samuel was finishing with the burnt offering, Samuel arrived. "Saul, went out to meet and welcome him." But Saul said, "What is this you have done?" Saul replied, I saw my men scattering from me, and and I didn't arrive when you said you would. And the Philistines are at Michmash and ready for battle. So I said, the Philistines are ready to match against us in Gilgal, and haven't even asked the Lord for help. So I left completed to offer the burnt offering myself before you came. How foolish!" Samuel explained. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God gave you. Had you kept it, the Lord would have established your kingdom of Israel forever. But now your kingdom must end, and the Lord has sorted out the men after his own heart. The Lord has already appointed him to be a leader of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command. Samuel then left Gilgal and went to his own way, but the rest of the troopers went with Saul to meet the army. They went up in form of Gilgal and in Gibash in the land of Benjamin. When Saul continued counted the men who were still with him. He found only 600 were left. Saul and Jonathan and the troopers with them were staying at the Gaba in the land of Benjamin. The Philistines set up the camp in Michmash. 3 readings of parties soon left for camp for the Philistines. One went north towards Ophir and the land of Shaul. Another went west to the Blue Horon, and the third moved towards the border of above the valley of Jobium near the wilderness. There were no blacksmiths in the land of Israel. In those days, the Philistines wouldn't allow them to fear allow them for the far fear they would make swords and spears of the Hebrews. So whenever the Israelites needed to sharpen their plowshares, picks and axes or skulls, they had to take them to the Philistines' blacksmith. And the courage and then charge was as follows: a quarter of 1 ounce of silver for sharpening the plow shaft, or a pick of 1/8 of an ounce of sharpening the ox, or making the point of the ox goad. So on the day of the battle, one of the people of Israel had showed or speared the soul of Jonathan, and past detachments had meanwhile been scattered by the continuance of Philistines' army.